Because of his undisputed power throughout his career in organized crime, Joaqun El Chapo Guzmán is one of the most notorious drug traffickers of all time. However, there were people who eventually brought his drug empire down. After multiple prison escapes during his more than 10-year reign, this spyware was his ultimate downfall, causing Chapo to be arrested by Mexican and U.S. law enforcement and sentenced in a Brooklyn courthouse. The Sinaloa-based cartel's leader is currently serving life in prison plus 30 years at the supermax ADX Florence in Florence, Colorado. Guzmán was arrested in Guatemala in 1993, extradited to Mexico, and sentenced to 20 years in prison for murder and drug trafficking. He bribed prison guards and escaped from federal maximum security prison in 2001. In 2014, he was again arrested by police in Mexico. Prior to formal sentencing in 2015, he escaped through a tunnel dug by associates into his jail cell. Following a shootout in January 2016, Mexican authorities arrested him and extradited him to the United States a year later. We all know the great Sinaloa cartel, famous during the 90s. Guzmán's Sinaloa cartel was the wealthiest and most powerful of Mexico's drug cartels at the time of his arrest. It smuggled multi-ton cocaine shipments from Colombia to the United States via Mexico by air, sea, and road, and it had distribution cells all over the country. The organization has also been involved in the production, smuggling, and distribution of Southeast Asia heroin, marijuana, and Mexican methamphetamine. When Palma was arrested by the Mexican army in 1995, Guzmán took control of the cartel. Following his third arrest, prosecutors played a phone call between Guzmán and a cartel operative nicknamed Gato for the jury during the trial of Joaqun El Chapo Guzmán, the two-time prison escape and alleged kingpin of Mexico's infamous Sinaloa cartel. Guzmán is overheard in the call instructing a cartel member to bribe a commander in the Mexican Federal Police, according to federal prosecutors. In 2009, the FBI's New York field office received the big tip they had been waiting for. According to the informant, the world's most famous drug lord, Joaqun El Chapo Guzmán, hired a young technology specialist who built the kingpin's sophisticated encrypted cell phone system. That technician is Christian Rodriguez, a 32-year-old Colombian who dropped out of college to start his own cybersecurity company and ended up working with drug cartel members to secure their communications. During the trial, Rodriguez cooperated and testified against his former client. As he began his testimony, the two locked eyes, and Rodriguez appeared nervous during questioning. Rodriguez first met Guzmán in 2008 at a meeting in the mountains where the Sinaloa cartel leader had been hiding from authorities after escaping from a Mexican prison in a laundry cart years before. Rodriguez describes being taken to a secret airstrip to be flown to the meeting, where he was met by armed military. Rodriguez's first project was to build an office-like phone extension system for the Sinaloa cartel associates that would allow their conversations to be encrypted or untraceable by authorities. Guzmán, who disliked working with computers, was pleased with his ability. Guzmán asked Rodriguez if he could install spyware to monitor the activities of specific devices. Rodriguez installed a program called FlexiSpy, which allowed Guzmán to read text messages, emails, phone calls, and GPS coordinates from phones that had the program installed. Rodriguez was instructed to install the software on brand new phones that would have been given to people chosen by Guzmán. Guzmán was tracking 50 phones in total. It was like a toy for him, Rodriguez explained. He really liked it. Guzmán then desired the ability to remotely activate the phone's microphone in order to listen in on conversations taking place around it. According to Rodriguez, Guzmán referred to the Blackberries as special phones, and he used them to spy on his close friends. He eventually made a habit of it, calling his friends at random times, then turning on the microphone after the call ended to hear what they had to say about him. Guzmán called not only his lieutenants, but also his wife, children, and mistresses. In 2012, he texted a mistress, Agustina Cabanillas Acosta, "How are the sales?" Like a swarm of bees, she says. The Israeli NSO group was one of the companies claiming to be involved in the operation to bring down the cartel leader. Despite statements made by one of the company's founders on the subject, NSO was not mentioned during the trial. The chairman of the NSO board of directors set out to demonstrate their product to the first customer. For the first time, sources familiar with the company's history confirmed that this customer was Mexico, which was dealing with rampant organized crime, drug cartels, and human trafficking. The transaction was a huge success for both parties. A task force formed to combat crime had suddenly gained eyes and ears, and its members enthusiastically embraced NSO staff when they could suddenly see and hear what had previously been impenetrable and out of reach, particularly when it came to the encrypted BBM text message service on Blackberries, the phone of choice for cartel members. Regardless of the prestige war, one thing is certain: the capture and conviction of the Mexican drug lord were made possible by spyware. While Guzmán had the spyware installed on other people's phones, he had no idea that Rodriguez would eventually cooperate with the US government, allowing authorities to access conversations involving the cartel's leader. When Rodriguez eventually agreed to cooperate with the FBI, El Chapo's drug empire began to fall apart. The FBI was able to access Guzman's conversations with everyone from cartel associates to his wife, Emma Coronel, after Rodriguez granted them access. A FlexiSpy spokesperson stated that the company was not directly involved in Guzman's case, but that the company generally assists law enforcement with their investigations. Of course, we are delighted that our product was able to assist in uncovering illegal activities or bringing criminals to justice, the spokesperson said in a statement to CNN. The FBI intercepted over 200 phone calls from Guzman himself, as well as hundreds more from his operatives, lieutenants, and family members. Rodriguez's first act as an informant was to circumvent the secure network he'd set up in Guzman's mountain hideout. Rodriguez staged an outage in May 2010 to temporarily take the network offline. Rodriguez's former boss, Jorge Cifuentes, assumed the servers were down because Rodriguez had simply forgotten to renew the lease. In reality, the outage was staged to force Guzman and his agents to use compromised cell phones, allowing the FBI to listen in on Guzman's allegedly negotiating a 6-ton cocaine deal with members of the FARC guerrilla group. However, the outage was only temporary, and Marston and the FBI required complete access to Guzman's network. As a result, agents directed Rodriguez to relocate the network's servers from Canada, where encryption laws had allowed the FBI to avoid search warrants, to the Netherlands. According to the Dutch newspaper NL Times, the Dutch high-tech crime team collaborated with the FBI for 18 months to compromise the network and gain access to the hundreds of calls that formed the foundation of the prosecution's case. His wife was one part of his criminal activities. Guzman and his wife spent much of their time apart while he evaded authorities, and he would check in on her and her twin daughters, born in California 2011. Coronel addressed Guzman as Don Joaquin or Mr. Joaquin and Daddy. He would address her as Darling. In one conversation, she suggests that perhaps it's best for mommy to make her enchiladas for you. After all, it was her enchiladas that made you fall in love with her. When their daughters were about 6 months old, he remarked that one was fearless. "I'm going to give her an AK-47 so she can hang with me," Guzman said of one of the girls. Guzman refers to his twin daughters, Molly and Kiki, as little queens in the text and advises Coronel to register the babies under a different name so that they can buy a new house. One day in February 2012, BlackBerry messages show Guzman checking in with Coronel to ensure her safety. She tells him about a suspicious car, which Guzman claims is a government vehicle. "You go ahead and live a normal life," he advises. "They just want to see if you come where I am." Later, he asks her if she has a gun, and she says she has one of his. "Put it in the hidden compartment, darling," he says. The intercepted messages provide authorities with insight into more than just Guzman's complicated love life. During a conversation with Coronel, she hands her phone to her father, and Guzman advises him to only use the BlackBerry for communications, saying that working with radios is dangerous because Border Patrol is listening. He tells Coronel's father that if he uses a radio before taking a trafficking flight, don't even send 1 kilo, or everything will drop. Guzman, whose encrypted screen name is simply Jay, freely messages about drug trafficking and asks Acosta to find him someone willing to go fishing, to meet a cartel ship carrying drugs hundreds of miles off the coast of the United States and bring the drugs back in on a fishing boat. In some texts, Guzman explicitly names the drugs he is accused of trafficking. Acosta asks Guzman if he wants the big ones or the small ones at one point, a veiled reference to marijuana versus cocaine, which comes in a smaller package. He answered cocaine. When CNN contacted a Coronel representative, he said he had no comment on the allegations of Guzman's infidelity. Acosta described Guzman's spying habit in messages to another person, saying, "I caught him yesterday looking at a whole bunch of pictures like coming from security cameras," and that he quickly closed the windows he'd been looking at when she walked in. Many people were involved in his arrest, but the IT guy and the FBI were present during the trial, which caused his drug empire to fall to pieces. It is also said that his wife, Coronel, ran the empire after his arrest, but the empire was not as successful after her arrest. What do you think? Tell us in the comments section down below.